My main message is first the lessons that both we in Iceland and the international community must learn from the financial crisis in recent years. And secondly, that despite some difficulties, the Icelandic economy is regaining its strength. Many of our most prominent companies in clean energy, in fishing, in tourism, in IT, and many other areas are in fact doing very well indeed. And the strong natural resources of Iceland, the fish stocks, the energy resources, the fresh water, and a number of other resources provide a very strong foundation for continuous growth of the Icelandic economy in the coming years. And finally, I will draw attention to the fact that due to the evolution in the Arctic and the northern regions, with the opening up of the new sea routes that will radically change the traffic between Asia and Europe and America through the northern passage, Iceland is in a very strategic location for global trade once the northern sea route sort of opens up within the next 10 or 20 years.
Okay, so but taking you back then to some years ago when things were looking less optimistic for Iceland, when did it become clear for you that the banking sector was out of balance in Iceland?
Well, there were some difficulties in 2006, but then it seemed that the banks were regaining their strength, and although there were a number of warning signs, the regulatory authorities as well as the international rating agencies continue to give the banks very good remarks. So we were paradoxically faced with the situation in 2007 into 2008 that whereas there were some critical comments, including from the Danske Bank here in Copenhagen, the international rating agencies and the regulatory authorities were giving the banks sort of very positive marks. So at that time we tended to believe the prestigious rating agencies as well as the regulatory authorities, not only the regulatory authorities in Iceland, but also the regulatory authorities in the countries where the banks were also operating, including Britain and the Netherlands and the Nordic countries. So by the middle of 2008 and into the fall, it was clear that not only we, but also the international financial community was in a grave situation. And if there was a fundamental crisis in the international financial community, that could, of course, have devastating effects on the Icelandic banks.
But do you think that that the political establishment in Iceland at that time, or the time prior to that, promoted the spirit of unfettered growth in the banking industry?
Well, it is absolutely clear that in the last decade of the 20th century and in the first years of the 21st century, the economic policy making in Iceland, like in most Western European countries, and including the United States, was very much influenced by the economic orthodoxy of the time of laissez-faire economics, deregulation, privatization. And so our policies at that time were very much in sync with what came out of what some people have called the Reagan-Thatcher era in Western economies, reinforced by the Alan Greenspan monetary policies. So in that sense, Iceland was not an island. It was an integral part of this framework. We were perhaps unfortunate in the sense with respect to the timing, because the banks were privatized at the time when the world was awash with money, when there was very easy money all over the world. And that enabled these young private banks to grow very fast, which would have been difficult in another international situation.
But is that also a lesson you're going to talk about? Lessons. Would it be feasible for the government of Iceland now to keep some sort of control of the banks now going forward?
Absolutely. I will list seven lessons that you can go on the English side of the website in about 2 hours or an hour and a half on the president.is the website, and get the text of my speech. And there are many lessons. One is, of course, that our banks, through our membership of the European Economic Area, became a part of the integrated European market. And one of the lessons I think we have learned, which I'm going to mention here today, that there are considerable dangers in having a pan-European financial market without having strong pan-European regulatory agencies, because it's quite clear that the national regulatory bodies have great difficulty in monitoring all the activities which their banks engage in other European countries. Secondly, I think one of the lessons also is that in evaluating the risks of the banks in the early years of the 20th century, the 21st century, both the rating agencies as well as regulatory authorities concentrated on individual banks, whereas in hindsight there should have been concentration on the financial system as a whole, about the possibility of a collapse of the financial system as a whole. I think the third lesson is that modern banks in the last 10 years or so have in fact become high-tech IT companies with very powerful computer-driven systems, whereas the regulatory agencies have continued to operate more in the old-fashioned way.
Okay, so there's also a tech gap there.
Yes, it was a difficulty to keep up with the high-speed technical transformation of modern banking.
But do you then think that there should be a state ownership in the Icelandic banks then going forward? Would that be more healthy for the country?
Well, what we have now is a mixed system. One of the banks, what was previously the Landsbanken, is owned by the state. And in hindsight, I think we made a mistake by privatizing all the banks in a relatively short time. And a more mixed system would have been wiser. And now we have that mixed system.
But also, you personally also promoted the. One last question. You personally also promoted the Icelandic business model in 2005 and 2006, and have been criticized for that. How do you feel about that in retrospect?
Well, of course, it is always the part of the mandate of the president to support the economy of our country, to promote economic growth and prosperity for our people. And those three banks were the biggest companies in Iceland. They were providing thousands of young Icelanders, highly educated Icelanders, with job opportunities both in Iceland and other parts of the world. So it would have been strange in those years if the president, like others, had not participated in promoting the biggest companies in Iceland, especially since, as I told you before, they were being given very positive marks by international rating authorities. And like my colleagues, the head of state in Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and so on, promote the biggest companies of their country internationally. It has for a long time been a part of the presidency in Iceland. In previous decades, it was more the fishing companies and the agricultural companies.
Yeah.
But in the last 10 years, the banks became the biggest company. So, in addition, I have also promoted very strongly the clean energy companies in Iceland, as well as many others.